Let me ask you a question. What happens when you balance your finances, career, and your well-being? There's no limit to what you can achieve. I'm JaeVic Vickery, your host and guide on how to build wealth with wellness. Living in a world of information overload and misleading highlight reels, Finance, Fitness, Finesse is a podcast to help you realize you're not woke, you're broke, and how to change that in your favor. If you're looking to elevate your wealth, well-being, and discover the power of balance, tune in to learn why money matters, but wellness counts.
It's better to be liked than right. So you could have a whole lot of knowledge, but if people don't like you, people do business with people that they like. People do business with people that they're somewhat comfortable with.
Hey, Finessers! I want to welcome you guys to another episode of Finance, Fitness, and Finesse, where we build your wealth with wellness. I'm your host, JaeVic, and thank you for joining me for the Savvy Scholar, where industry experts share their insights on building wealth, managing stress, and living a balanced life. Before we get started, help your lifelong learner community grow and leave a rate and review for the show on the homepage. Your feedback is highly favored, and it helps bring more exposure to the show that we all love. Today's guest is all about making meaningful emotional bank deposits and redefining how we connect, negotiate, and collaborate. In this episode of F3, titled I've Got a Guy, I sit down with Savvy Scholar Mike Vickery, a nonprofit director at the Institute for Community. Mike brings a wealth of experience and insight into the art of networking and its ripple effects on personal and professional success. In this two-part episode, we'll explore relational behavioral transference, mastering negotiation tactics, and standing out in any room. From finding balance through service to uncovering new opportunities, Mike is here to show us how authentic connections can lead to extraordinary results. All right, let's get into it. So I'm wondering if you can help, my fellow young people out here understand how we can learn to negotiate effectively, especially with dealing with influential people that we may see in our eyes.
We touched on this a little bit, but I think it's most important to realize they're influential people because they're already winning, right? So realize who you're interacting with. You're interacting with someone who's experienced a certain amount of success already. So one of the best things you can do is, if you want to be successful, is listen. First, listen to successful people. So a lot of times just being in the room with them and listening to them and letting them lead the conversation will definitely help you. Showing empathy goes a long way, and it's going to help you identify their why. Remember, I talked about matching your why to their why. By listening to them, you're going to identify their why so you can connect to it. It also shows a whole lot of respect. So which leads it right into when these influential people, they love helping young people out, and especially young, talented people. A lot of times they do. They really want to help young, talented people, and they're looking for people to help, but they're going to help people that they like. So when you're there and you show empathy and you're listening and you're trying to engage with them and you're showing respect, it really opens doors for them to invite you in, because if they really think they can have someone they can pour knowledge into and someone that can learn from their experiences, everybody, I believe, inherently wants to share some of that with other people, be it with your children in business, or if you don't have children in your business, there's all kind of business owners out there that really want to teach other people how to do what they do. Because in your validation of wanting to learn that, you actually validate their existence and their professional life of what they've been doing, that it's actually something worthwhile.
Yes, Lifelong Learners Club. Absolutely. I will say my dad was a helpful founder of it in my life because I'm certainly a lifelong learner. The best part of this is that you're very consistent and it's simple, right? Some of the things you said, show empathy, be respectful, know your worth, know your why. It doesn't have to be something super complicated to learn how to communicate, how to negotiate, how to leverage your connections in your favor and everyone's party's favor. The simplicity of it is truly beautiful. One thing too that growing up that has been so interesting is I'm so thankful to have a dad that I think can do anything, can take on anything, but you aren't a handyman in certain areas of like fixing pipes or fixing cars in certain ways, different things like that. And so, really, what I'm getting at here is connection negotiations. From what I've understood, it doesn't always have to be with the people who are making millions of dollars running these big companies. There's also people within your small community that can help you in big ways when life starts lifing. And so, what has been your understanding of that through the course of your lifetime of the benefit, the return of investment on connecting with people from all different socioeconomic backgrounds?
I had an old linebacker buddy. You know him as Uncle Tom Wells, but he was my old linebacker partner at Northwestern. He's one of my board members right now at one of our local organizations at High Point in Romeoville. When we were in college, he used to, at 5 o'clock in the morning, we would have spring practice, which no one was a big fan of, but they didn't want us to miss class at Northwestern. So they would have football practice at 5 o'clock in the morning. So no one had an excuse to miss practice for class or class for practice. So he was a Kansas boy. And so he used to get up in the morning and he'd be walking around the locker room telling me that together we're better than $5 million leather, if there is such a thing. And man, I hated him for that, especially at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, for him to
Oh
say that.
no.
But I've realized that together we are better. Everyone has something to offer other people. So in the work that we do in communities, we're primarily volunteer-based community development. And so we create value through relationships. And the thing is, everyone has time, talent, and treasure to give. Some people have more time, some people have more talent, some people have more treasure. Maybe they make a lot of money. Everybody's a little bit different, but together you can be better. I go out of my way to try to befriend people that everyone should have a friend who's a plumber. Everyone should have a friend who's an electrician. Everyone should have
Mm-hmm.
a friend who's a mechanic. If you're
Yes.
and if you are a mechanic or a plumber or electrician, you probably have a lot of friends or people trying to be your friend. Okay. But there's also other things that everybody can give their knowledge and their talent to other people. Some people are just really good at, your mom is really good at making people smile and making them feel like they're the most important person in the room. Now, I'm not nearly as good at that.
Mm-hmm.
So I get invited to a lot of places because they want her to come. That is her gift. I have a friend who's a financial guide and does financial planning. Well, I've learned a lot about financial planning by asking them questions. I've learned a lot about my truck and all the vehicles that I drive through the mechanic friend that I've met because I go over there and I watch him fix it, or I'll ask him questions, or I'll hang out with him for a little bit. And he's taught me an awful lot. There was a college planner I made friends with. I had 4 daughters. You were one of them, to try to get through school, get through college.
Mm-hmm.
And he was an expert at financial aid. Well, at the same time, he was trying to start a nonprofit with his son that dealt with wrestling and helping disadvantaged kids. Well, he tapped my knowledge base about operating a nonprofit, how to start one, how to start raising money. And I tapped his knowledge about financial planning to get kids through college. The exchange of that knowledge was key. And yeah, sure, I could have just paid him for it, and then he could have asked me for my time and I could have consulted and charged him. But man, it was way more fulfilling just to know that, okay, he's pouring into me, I'm pouring into him, we're helping each other, and there were times where we did business together, but for the most part, our conversations, we would meet for 3 hours. We'd have a 1 hour meeting and
Wow.
we'd meet for 3 hours, because for 2.5 of the hours, we'd be talking about each other's projects and learning from each other. So those are the kind of things that are available to you really in all genres of life. Any genre of life that you want to learn about, there's someone out there that has that knowledge base, but you have to also believe you have something to offer them. So identify what
Mm-hmm.
you have to offer other people so that there's that equal exchange.
Yes. What I was thinking of as you were talking is the power of the question. I mean, the power of asking questions. And also, you're not going to know what you're interested in, what you're passionate about, where your mind could go with new ideas, unless if you ask questions of people who have different areas of knowledge and expertise, no matter what age they're at. I know for me, you really work to try and make sure that your daughters were financially savvy and that we were ready. But at the end of the day, you also weren't going to like drag us if we were like, all right, whatever, old man. Sure, we'll sign up for the Roth. I don't know what it means. Stop talking to me. That's how I was. When you first helped me with that or signing up for a credit card, I didn't really know what the importance of it was, but I trusted you. And then you were very patient as I worked to eventually ask more questions. And then all of a sudden, I'm paying for most things on my own. And I'm like, holy crap, I need to learn how this money thing works before I am broke. And so learning how to ask effective questions, not being afraid to, because I knew that I did want to grow and go beyond what I do know, as I hope most people do want to. It's very scary, and there certainly are intimidations behind feeling like you're stupid for having to ask a question, but how would you ever find out the answer? How would you ever start developing those relationships? And even going back to what you said earlier, we love to, as humans, we love to provide skills. We love to talk about something that we know a lot about, to teach others and continue to pass it on. That's a core part of relationships, and it all starts with the question. So I love that you were able to mention that. It's excellent.
You bring back memories of when you first start teaching someone about anything. If you wait too long, so many people wait so long to teach their kids, say, like about money. They wait until you have this teenager, maybe a young adult standing in front of you, and then they have their own ideas about that they've developed about money, which have been influenced by everything else other than you.
Mm-hmm.
As a parent, for you guys, it started out 10-10-80,
Oh
right?
yeah, I've mentioned that
So
before in my episodes. Mm-hmm.
yeah. And then when you guys were really young, I think all you really knew was you didn't focus on the fact that we gave you 10 pennies. And so when you were 5 years old, you got 10 pennies. And the first penny you had to give to church. And the second penny you had to save and not spend. And then you could spend the other 8 pennies any way you want. And then it graduated to nickels and then dimes and then quarters and then dollars. And then that as you got older. And then when you became a teenager, all of a sudden it got to the point where you needed to learn scarcity. So what happens when you don't save your money and you run out of it?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, I think we wait way too long before we teach people about money, and then especially also about relationships and how the relationships relate to money. You guys have figured out that, gosh, your grandmother will really help you guys a whole lot more than I will if you run out of money. So then you guys had to have a respect to not go to her because your grandmother would always want to take care of you guys. And for us as parents, your mother and I always wanted you guys just to learn the value of it.
We get exposed to so many different things, whether we like it or not. Whether we're under our parents' influence, whether we're at school, whether it's sports or work, anywhere in our life, we're taking in constant information about all of the dimensions of wealth in our life, whether it's relational or financial. And there are transactions that take place in regards to the knowledge that we accumulate through our experiences. With money being a game, right? There's no one right way to do it. And you've certainly taught me to stay fluid in regards to the knowledge that I'm able to take in. But there's also that compassionate accountability aspect of it. I remember at summer camp, there was this big concession stand that had all these different goodies that I totally wanted as between 7 years old, 13 years old. And I remember there would always be a call for it, and we would be like at our lunchtime or gym time, whatever it was. And it'd be like, okay, concession stand. And while all these other kids would be able to just run into line and go and get the concessions, I did have a little bit of money from, the chores that we were able to do around the house. But I remember my sisters and I, we had to take a second to really think about, okay, are we going to go and spend our money on the concessions, on the chips, on whatever? It just taught us to think about the investment we're about to make with our money and where it could go later on. Obviously you weren't having us buy everything that we ever had to buy as kids, but if there was something kind of in a certain fund category that wasn't always like a big need that you knew we could put some money in on, that maybe you'd match us at, which you also kind of taught us about the company match method as well, now that I'm realizing it. It's just that early exposure of just being mindful about your money.
Do you want the chips or do you want the new Game Boy cartridge you're saving up for?
Exactly. Exactly. How can building relationships with mentors help in learning effective financial strategies? Because you've talked a bit about how you have friends that you've made and, investing that time in like the financial space and being able to give and take and learn different things from each other. But when you're young, like me, an emerging adult, you may not have all those friends yet, but you may have people in your life. Like for me, one of my mentors is certainly you, Dad, along with some of the other connections I've learned how to make. What is the impact of having a mentor that we can ask those hard questions to for financial strategy?
It'll give you competency in things that you don't have competency in. You know what I mean? So we talked about time, talent, treasure. Relationships equal time, talent, treasure. And if you want to learn about investing, find someone to mentor you who's your financial advisor. If you want to learn about housing and real estate, you can find someone who works in real estate. When you're young, it could be one of your friend's parents. If you actually volunteered your time or asked to ride a day to see what they do and to learn, you can learn a whole lot. If you want to learn the ins and outs of money, go up to a banker, go up to someone who works in a bank. You worked for a bank for a while. Your knowledge base exploded because all of a sudden you were dealing with customer issues. And so you received all this training and had all this access to answer their questions. And in that, you built your knowledge base. So you need to just seek out those different things. You need to look at different skill sets that you want and then try to seek out those people or seek out where they're at. When I first came and I first started working in the nonprofit sector out in Romeoville, first thing I did is I went out and I joined the Rotary because I knew that a lot of people that represent the schools and the government, they are Rotarians. There are also business people, but there's a lot of school and government people. After I worked with that group for a while as a Rotarian for several years, now I'm very involved in the Chamber of Commerce because then that gives you a whole different set of business people from all sectors of business that are around you that you get access to by joining some of these local groups. So there's all kinds of different local groups and associational groups that you can join that'll give you access to people in the industries that you want knowledge and the access to them in a social environment where you can actually just walk up and talk with them. Building those relationships with mentors, they will give you an expertise that it will take you a long time to get on your own. And it's also real world expertise from people that are in your sphere of life, as opposed to like, you can go to the internet and I can find a subject that'll tell you two opposite things about that subject.
Seriously.
So when you're online, which one am I going to believe? But if I have someone who actually has competency and is successful standing in front of me telling me this is how the housing market works, well, they're actually excelling in the housing market. They're right in front of me and I can touch them. They're real. It's not
Yeah.
they're real. And there's also an accountability to that. You can go back to those people later if you have more questions or if it works out a different way and ask, why did that happen? So those relationships can really just open up your world to really whatever it is that you want to learn intimately about. It can provide a way more intimate experience than, say, just online learning or going online surfing. I mean, podcasting is a way that you bring people closer to you because you see podcasters, you
Oh
listen
my
to them.
gosh, yes. You're right on point.
It's a
Having
relational
conversations,
transaction.
yeah, it is. It's a relational transaction, and I'm connecting with you. I'm asking you questions in real time. And based on even the tone you're delivering it, the phrasing, it triggers different things in my mind compared to typing in something into Google or typing something into an AI trying to get the answers. So, what I'm hearing here is that along with our relational wealth, in order to elevate that, you also have to learn to embrace different environments and place yourself in different environments to meet new people, meet those mentors. And that's where you can start is how diverse can I make my environment? How diverse can I make my relational wealth and therefore your overall knowledge base? What advice would you give an emerging adult who's really just trying to figure out how to change their environment, how to elevate their relational wealth, their overall knowledge investment portfolio? What would you like to leave them with today?
One of the main things is to have some balance about what you're doing. because a lot of people, they go after something. And in the 30 years that I've been doing this, I've met a lot of very successful people who are extremely like just lonely and disoriented about, why did I do all this? What was the point of all this? It always comes back to like relationships, and really where we excel as a nonprofit organization when we do connect with major donors or large donors is we try to bring them as close to the people that we're serving as possible, because there's something about that when you bring them in that they realize it gives them an underlying purpose to whatever business that they're running. Beyond just like, okay, I have a big boat and I have a few houses around the country that I can go to. At a certain point, they go, so what? I would tell someone young that absolutely you have to go all out, and the effort it takes to build a company. You know, I was the first employee of the nonprofit that I run, and to be here, it's now 30 years later, and to still be here and to see all the different things that we get to do is truly amazing. But I would not have enjoyed that as much if I didn't have balance. If I didn't have a little balance with my family. A big thing is find some way you can serve. Time, talent, treasure. You're working so hard at your own business and your own things, but we truly, as people, we get our own self-value through serving others. There's quite no other way. For young people, work extremely hard, but also have balance, have time for yourself, time for your family, and also make sure you have time to serve others. When you serve other people, I don't care if you go somewhere at a local food pantry to serve, or maybe you help volunteer to coach a team and you're serving in your community. Whatever it is, do that and give of your time, talents, and treasure. Give it openly, but then also see who's noticing, because a lot of those mentors are in those groups, and all of a sudden they're like, why are they doing this? And then they find someone who's doing something who like doesn't have a horse in the game. There's nothing coming back to them. And they go, wow, I want to help that person because they're actually doing something to help other people and doing something very selfless. So it makes them want to do something selfless. I have an example of that. One of my mentors who was on my initial board who recruited me, his name was Bruno Bottarelli. He's had a big influence on me. He's very much a visionary. But at one point, we were starting our second organization, our National Institute for Community Organization. And I said, you know what? We were talking about here, near, and far. We help people here, we help people near, and we want to help people far away. And the thing about far away is we want to help people far away, and we don't want anything coming back. Like, we strengthen communities and neighborhoods through what we do. So a lot of times multifamily housing developers, they'll want to partner with us because we make their projects stronger. So they get something in return for that, even if it's anecdotal to an extent, but they get something back from that. This was doing something that there was nothing coming back in our direction. We were doing it just simply because we could. We could help people, so we did. Well, one of my board members was listening to that, and Bruno introduced me to a man named Neil Gerald. Well, the Geralds had a sister who was in Honduras and married to a prominent person of Honduran descent that they met at University of Illinois. Here, actually, that's a little tie-in for you. They were trying to address some needs that she knew about in the local barrios, in the very, very poor barrios in Central America that she was at. She was living in Honduras, in Tegucigalpa at the time. So they wanted to address this, but they had no idea how. So Bruno introduced me to Neil, and he said, well, Mike, you're here talking about you want to do something for people far away, that just to help. And Neil has his sister who wants to help. And Neil, you've been very successful and you want to do something to help other people, but you want to make sure it's on the up and up, and you want it to be as effective as possible. So all of our whys lined up, and we helped partner with Casa de Luz, which now has 2 different sites in Honduras, Zambrano and Tegucigalpa. We provide yearly support. We've probably, I would say that through that relationship and all the fundraising that we've done over the past 16 to 17 years, we've probably raised somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 million to found these 2 sites. We take care of over 200 families in Honduras. I get to go there every couple of years. I take a mission team. You haven't gone on a mission trip with me because you were busy playing softball for a long time and you couldn't get away. But I've been able to take a couple of your sisters on those mission trips. But I sat down and we connected our whys. And because of that, thousands of families that are extremely poor have been helped. The kids go to preschool and they're taken care of. And these neighborhood communities have been changed for the better for these families. And there's nothing coming back in our direction. We did it only because we could. So I got what I wanted out of it. Neil got what he wanted out of it, to be able to give to something that he could get really close to, because he's traveled there and his sister was there for many, many years. And we want to go help someone far away. And I asked my board, who do you have that can help us do something far away? And it just happened to be there was somebody in the room who said, hey, I got a guy.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Finance, Fitness, and Finesse. A big thank you to Mike Vickery for sharing his journey and expertise with us. Remember, dimensional wealth is key to building a better future, and with community leaders like Mike, we're one step closer to a financially empowered society. If you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you did, help me learn with you and be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Stay tuned for more episodes where we continue to build your wealth and wellness. I'm JaeVic, and please don't act woke and be broke. Until next time, stay savvy, and if you don't know, now you know. Disclaimer, this podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial or mental health advice. Always seek professional guidance tailored to your personal needs.